this responsibility, but also control over our lives.
Excellent. That's awesome. Okay, so in terms of taking like a full responsibility over our lives, and I'll just do another jump in here intro because I realized the recording was not going. It's on live, but the recording was not going. So we're here with Christian Semlitsch, if you're just tuning in, speaking expert, mimic expert, speaker trainer. And favorite life principle revolves around the idea of taking 100% responsibility for our lives. Am I kind of tracking you correctly on what you're saying there?
Yeah, it's by a book of Jack Canfield. I remember the name now, and that was the first principle of his principles book, and I think this is the most powerful principle we should really be aware of. Otherwise, we're giving the power and the control away over our lives, because when you're pointing at someone and blaming this person, well, what stays then in our responsibility, and what stays in our power to change? And if we take the responsibility, we see the possibilities and the opportunities.
Awesome. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Makes so much sense. And from that place of power, please, Christian, can you tell us what exactly is your business?
In fact, I am in the communication business in the broadest sense, because I am a speaker trainer. In that sense, I help especially women. I empower women to discover their voice, to develop their skills, and to deliver their gifts to the world. Now, on that journey, I realized that so many people, especially women, have problems emotionally. They have been abused, they have been suppressed, and so on. So I created another process, which is called Crack the Emo Code, to help them to find out what was going on and how do they get over it. Because sometimes they do not dare to speak in public, although that's part of Discover the Voice. But sometimes I need to put a certain process in front of it. Otherwise, they do not get their message across, or they do not find their voice. So that's one of the two Facebook groups. And the other thing that you just mentioned, which is not active at the moment, what you see in the background, it's about Mimik, because the micro mimic is happening very fast, within 100 milliseconds, very fast. And if you are able to read, you can connect better with your audience. With it may be one-on-one or in a group, it doesn't matter, because the signals are universal. That's proven. There are over 3,500 studies about that. And what I do is I help people to read these emotions very, very fast. So they know exactly, oh, something's going on, not the interpretation, but something's going on. And then they connect with the persons directly, which is building a deep connection, because there's suddenly someone that is not only listening, but also seeing, oh, he saw me. And that's what people want. What we learn from Oprah, people want to be seen, to be heard, okay, and to be understood. And these are the three processes that I am building within Facebook groups to help people to really connect and communicate on a deeper level.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. The idea of that depth of connection, which seems to be not all the time, but has kind of a stereotype of being more artificial or superficial these days with social media. So I'll just kind of throw a question here, Christian. Is that applicable over a Zoom call even? Can that skill set work?
Yes, it can. Although, for example, I have gallery view now, and it's only taken about a third of the screen. But if I'm going to use a different kind of view where I see myself full, and when you speak, I see yourself in full, then I can apply it, because I can see this micro mimics, these facial expressions directly.
Wow, that's great. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's kind of go to the bigger vision of why you're doing this, so to speak. So what's the biggest vision for your business, for the community, and the planet? And just take that in general, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily specific, but that vision for why you're doing what you're doing and how you believe that's going to impact things in a bigger way.
Yep. I think there's a very important question which everyone should be able to answer. I always start with I can't see my mother in these moments when she's not able to stand her ground. Okay, my father just died in November, but he was a very, very directive person, a lot of authority. And I realized that she was in that process of not being able also to speak because she didn't find her voice, but also she couldn't withstand. So why do I so say I empower women to discover their voice, to develop their skills and to deliver their gift to the world? It's exactly, the root is there. And when I look at the world, there are only a few countries that are being ruled by women. There are only a few, let's say a few hundred or thousand women in the leadership in big companies. And what we see, take IBM as an example, the CEO is a woman. And since she's there, they have less turnover of people, and they have much more, how do I say, they have much more connection within the employees. And it changed the whole strategy changed, and the whole communication within the companies changed. So this, and I think this is a strength of women, to connect, to have a different social view to things, how to bring things together. That's it's you know, that's in connect. It's in their DNA, and I think when we can bring that into the world, we might have a different world. And then just chunk it down. We can have that in society, in politics, in companies, in associations, wherever you go. And I think it's a great trend, but I don't see it as a trend, but I see it as their right to have that kind of influence and that kind of positions.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal, Christian. My late fiance was definitely stepping into her power with that speaking ability, and I think every woman, certainly in the household, they're a leader. But of course, you know, there's been for some time, centuries, been a suppression of that in public, and potentially.
Still is in different countries where they're not able to show themselves, where they're not allowed to speak out loud their opinions. That would embarrass the man. It depends on the religions, it depends on the cultures. And I think step by step, we can make a difference in cultures, in countries, but also in our Western countries. Still it is, it's not done. And I think we as speakers, we as coaches, trainers, we could take over a huge responsibility for that change.
Yeah, I love that. And would you say, you know, this kind of common thing, I think it's, you know, somewhat common knowledge, but men having fear of how powerful women really are, and that's where the suppressions come from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the work that you're involved in that capacity. And could you share a little bit about your methodology? That would kind of be like the steps or the moves that you might actually empower women with to speak their voice.
Yeah, the 3 steps I just disclosed before. It's discover their voice. Now, one of the most common problems that I see is that people are not, or women, it's not specifically women, people are not used to chunk their message down. First of all, it's about finding their message, you know, and already finding that message is a huge step, because they have an idea, a vision of something they would like to bring over, a kind of a message. But then when I start to ask, it's, you know, it's all over and it's not specific. And that's the first step, to distill what they have in mind so they can create that message. In fact, I'm starting with the pitch. I'm going through the process as long as it's necessary to bring the message down to, let's say, 60 to 120 seconds, something like that. Even go back to the Hollywood rule, which is 3 sentences, 1 sentence, 3 words, 1 word, which is a very interesting concept, but it brings people to really chunk the message down to one particular thing, to condense it. And when they have that, they can start to talk about it. And I know for myself, I mean, we were doing that, writing a book about, to bring our message over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time I realized, which is 2 months now, that I realized where it comes from. It comes from what I saw, what I watched in my family with my mother. And I didn't know that before. So that work is so incredible, powerful, but incredibly important to do. And then you're able to chunk it down. And that takes time.
Yeah, that precision, yeah. And there's that kind of, I've read this quote, I'm going to paraphrase it, but the idea of, I would have made this letter shorter, but I didn't have the time. And so
Yeah,
being
right.
so precise and
Exactly.
concise with our ideas is really an art and definitely a skill as well. That's awesome. Okay. So let's just go into here. We'll begin to kind of wrap it up. A couple last questions. So what's your favorite book and why, Christian?
Do you know the book The Alchemist of Paulo Coelho, the Brazilian author?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorites as well.
Oh, cool. Cool. I found an illustrated version, which I really love. It's an English version, but with hand-colored pictures in there.
Oh, cool.
I love that because, it's the story about someone who is on his way to find his dream. It's a way of story of the hero's journey, but he built it completely different and in a very good and understandable way. It's not complicated to read, but it touches your heart because you can see yourself in it. And I read that book even before I knew about the hero's journey, which is of course in all over the world now. But there's much more in that story. Is much more heart power in it. That's why I love it. I read it several times already.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it kind of goes back to the foundation of why we do what we do, right? Because there's the skill sets we adopt over time.
Yep.
But if it weren't for that inner passion and really getting in touch with our heart and our desire to be whatever, whether it's help others or, in your case, helping women express their voice because of what you witnessed early on in childhood. But that's really the very root and the seed from which everything germinates from. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite books too. And final question here, Christian. What currently, you've mentioned a couple Facebook groups. It's predominantly empowering women with their speaking, but could you just tell us what is your current project or offer and how could people get in touch with you?
Easiest thing is to go into Facebook, look under the groups, or just search for Seeker to Speaker and the number 2, Seeker to Speaker. There you find the possibility to go into the group. You can contact me by email. It's then seekertospeaker@gmail.com. And whatever is necessary, we will find out because I provide the possibility to get a free consultation. You get my Calendly link. You can even look what matches best with your personal calendar and schedule. And then we can find out what I can do for you. And if I'm the right person, maybe I'm not. Maybe I know someone who's better or is differently in specifically in specific actions or in specific tools and so on. So then I would provide this information too.
Okay, that's excellent. Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful work you're doing, really making the planet, the world a better place, bringing equality, equilibrium to all genders, well, both genders. And yeah, I think the future is definitely, you're on the leading edge of what is to come in a greater and greater way. So it's a pleasure to have you as my guest. And any final thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Final thoughts. Find your way and don't let anyone push you out of track. Trust your heart. That's what I would say.
That's beautiful. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, either live or through the recording here. And stay tuned for the next expert talks. There'll be more coming up as we go along here. And bye for now.
Bye for now.